Hi everyone! Welcome back to our channel. I'm Dr. Issa, your OBGYN on call. For today's video, we will be talking about age-appropriate sex education. This will be incredibly helpful if you have kids or if you plan to have one. As a society, we built up this taboo around discussing sex, especially with our children. But the truth is, avoiding the conversation does not protect our kids, it leaves them vulnerable. That's why it's time to change the narrative. When we approach sex education openly and honestly, we empower our children with the knowledge that they need to understand that sex and sexuality are healthy parts of life. If you find value in what we are discussing today, remember to subscribe and press the like button. It may be a small click for you, but it helps us continue these important conversations. Let's start with age-appropriate sex education and why it matters. Age-appropriate sex education covers the ins and outs of sex, intending to help young individuals develop respectful social and sexual relationships. Certain discussions are encouraged at specific ages since children may not fully comprehend sex at certain points in their development. With this approach, you can be sure that your shared information aligns with their cognitive and emotional capabilities. For example, explaining to a 4-year-old about their genitals is pretty acceptable, but the whole story about where do babies come from might be a bit too much. You need to customize the discussion to fit their growing minds and feelings. Now, some of the parents watching this video may think, why can't I just wait for my kid to just grow up and learn about sex in school? Why have this awkward discussion at such an early age? Well, age-appropriate sex education builds a foundation for children to fully understand their bodies and what sex is. By offering accurate information, we can counteract misconceptions. It also reduces the likelihood of engaging in unsafe practices and succumbing to peer pressure. You also need to consider that the digital age makes it easier for children to access different information online. Let's say your child saw some questionable sexual activities in a video. If they have no clear idea of what sex is, they might think that what they saw in the video is normal and they may possibly carry this to adulthood. But if you had prior discussions, they may be able to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy activities, and they may come to you for further clarification. Being able to comfortably talk about sex with their children sends a message that discussions about this topic is not something that they should be scared or embarrassed about, and that they can approach you about these topics. Let's have a quick discussion of things to note when talking to your child about sexuality and intercourse. Number 1, explain the topics at the level that they will understand. When talking about sex with your child, start with the basics and build upon their understanding as they grow. Be mindful of their comprehension level and keep the information clear, simple, and age-appropriate. For example, explaining to a 6 or 7-year-old about the specifics of ovulation, like talking about the follicles, the ovaries, the dominant follicle, and releasing an egg during ovulation, your child might be confused about the different terms that you just used. On the other hand, you can say that mommy has a small egg-making organ called the ovaries, and that little eggs are growing, and the best egg will be releasing an egg that could possibly become a baby. It may not be as accurate, but it's something that your child will understand. You can eventually clarify the whole process as your child grows up. Number 2, use accurate terms when talking about their genitals. It may be tempting to use the terms flower, cookie, junjun, the birds and the bees when explaining external genitalia, but it's better to teach them the anatomically correct terms for these body parts. This helps foster a healthy understanding of one's body and eliminates confusion and stigma associated with euphemisms. Number 3, both parents must actively participate in age-appropriate sex education. This ensures that your child receives a well-rounded perspective and that discussions about sex are open and welcome in the family. It's a joint effort to be able to create a supportive and informed environment. Number 4, this is not a one-time discussion and it doesn't need to be perfect. Sex education is an ongoing learning process for both parents and children. If your child asks a question that you're unprepared for or don't know the answer to, it's perfectly okay to say, "I don't know, let's find out together." This models a healthy approach to seeking information and reinforces that learning is a continuous journey. Number 5, never dismiss your child's questions. Let's say they saw a kissing scene in a movie. If they ask you about it and before you say, "Oh no, that's bad," try explaining as best as you can. This encourages your child to ask questions because you created an environment where curiosity is met with openness. Never dismiss or belittle their inquiries, even if the question is sensitive. Acknowledge their curiosity and assure them that you're there to provide the information when they're ready. Number 6, expect to feel some discomfort. Let's face it, talking about sex can be pretty awkward, but it's an essential part of the teaching process. Acknowledge your discomfort, but don't let it hinder the conversation. Recognize that your child sees you as a reliable source of information. Your willingness to discuss these topics sets the future tone for their attitudes towards sex. Now that we've got that out of the way, let me share the topics that are discussed under age-appropriate sex education. This will be a brief rundown, so I encourage you to research on the topics for further understanding as well. Let's begin with 0 to 2 years old. At this point, your baby is still wobbling around, trying to absorb the different kinds of information in their surroundings. You can use certain routine activities like bathing to introduce them to the concept of bodies. You can say, "Oh, look at your tummy," or "Oh, look at your little toes," while bathing them. When your child is around 2 to 3 years old, they will be curious about everything, especially with their own bodies. You have to embrace their questions with clear explanations. Teach them that every body part has a name and it plays a certain role. It's also at this time that you can teach your children that these parts are private and that nobody else should be touching them. As your child approaches 4 to 5 years old, their curiosity will continue to flourish, and you may even get questions such as, "Where do babies come from?" At this stage, they can understand that the baby grows in the womb and that it takes a tiny seed and an egg to make a baby. When your child asks, "Where do I come from?" encourage their thoughts first. Assess their understanding, and you can respond straightforwardly, such as, "Babies grow in a place in the mother's body called the uterus." Now, let's move on to the topics that you may discuss when your child turns around 6 to 8 years old. At this point, they may start to wonder how the baby gets inside the mother's body or into the uterus. You can start asking them what they think. This is a very great way to understand what level of knowledge they have at this point. You can then say that the sperm and an egg joins together to make a baby. Keep it straightforward. You can mention that it's something that grown-ups do when they're older and when they both decide that they want to, and it's not something for children yet. This age range is also a good time to gently introduce how their bodies will start to slowly change during puberty. This groundwork prepares them for the more thorough discussions ahead. As years go by, your child may ask more detailed questions, especially when they approach 9 to 12 years old. They may start asking about sexual intercourse and how babies are made through that process. As I have suggested, ask them first about what they think the process is. You can give them a simple explanation after that. For example, you can respond that a baby is made when the penis and the vagina fit together in a process called sexual intercourse. Sperm from the penis will meet an egg and it will fertilize it. This fertilized egg will now grow into a baby inside the uterus. Don't forget to touch the other ways that babies can come into families, like in vitro fertilization or IVF, adoption, or foster care. If they're curious about why people have sex, then you can simply explain to them that sex is one way that babies are made. It's also a chance to express your perspective, like adults have sex when they're older because they find it pleasurable to do together in private, and when you're in a healthy relationship, it could be normal. If your child asks about your personal experiences and you're not really comfortable sharing, it's perfectly okay to say, "That's private, but I'm happy to talk about sex more generally." At this age, your child may also discover masturbation and self-pleasure. If your child brings it up, keep it simple and reassuring. Before you say, "That's bad," and make them feel more guilty about what they did, then you can say the following. Did you know that some kids your age masturbate? It's touching your private parts down there in a way that feels nice. It's a private thing that some people choose to do on their own. Aside from sexual intercourse and masturbation, ages 9 to 12 is the prime time to dive into physical and emotional changes in adolescence, teenage sexuality, and fostering respectful romantic relationships during this time. It's also the perfect time to teach them about consent. They will also learn more about sex in school, especially from their teachers and even their peers. But this doesn't mean that you're now done with teaching them. Take a moment to chat with your children's teachers and understand how they tackle these important topics. Get insights into the curriculum, the teaching methods, and the overall approach. This helps you grasp what your child is learning within the school's walls. Well, that wraps up our insightful journey through age-appropriate sex education. Remember, the key to fostering healthy understanding of sex, bodies, and relationships is open communication. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our sex-positive community. We also encourage you to press the like button so we can reach more parents who may need this guide. If you have any questions or any topics that you would like us to cover in our future videos, drop them down in the comments below or in Lovet's social media accounts. You can check the links in the description box as well. See you in the next episode!